is we already talked about. Oh, thank you, Savannah. We're recording now. No, thank you. So we're reviewing some information from yesterday, seeing if anyone has questions. Is there anyone who still needs access to the Google Drive? I don't know that I got everyone access to that. So if you still need access to the Google Drive, if you're having trouble getting it from the email I sent you, or if you didn't get that email, you can email me or even just send in the chat right now what Gmail you'd like to use if you didn't receive that. Or if you still need to set up a Gmail, try to do that ASAP. Is anyone having, trouble accessing that stuff? Okay, cool. Any other questions about what we went over yesterday that might be good to talk about today? Anyone trying to figure stuff out still? Olivia, that's a good point. I think I feel like there is a Gmail for you somewhere, but I could be wrong. I think I tried to use your Park District email to send that share to, and I'm not sure if you'll be. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't have my Park District email anymore. It's the
Oh.
Gmail that you're sending it to.
Okay, let me make sure that I have your correct one then.
Are you guys still using the UPD Nature Camp Gmail?
Yeah, and Olivia, I'm comfortable with you logging into that Gmail account directly if you would like to do so.
Yeah, I'll just do that then.
Okay, perfect. If you have the info for that, yeah, that's.
It does sometimes ask me like, are you this person who's trying to log in? And of course, there's people from all over, but
So you've still got maybe some administrative.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Hey Ryan, thanks for being here today.
Hey everybody.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Olivia, I think that is a good way to do that for now. I still want to make sure I have your correct email for contact over email. I didn't realize that your Park District one wasn't going anymore. So I think I have your email somewhere.
Yeah, I'll email you.
Okay. Thank you.
Before COVID, Olivia was my environmental public program assistant. So she worked a lot at the Nature Center. She's worked with camps before. She's run her own wild child survival camp before. So Olivia's got a lot of background with us. And, I had to let everybody go, all my part-time staff during COVID. But so we're lucky that Olivia's still sticking around in some capacities with us.
Agreed.
I'm really looking
forward to it. Well, let's get started. I am going to start us out today with a mindfulness exercise, kind of a guided, almost like a meditation. And my intent is not to zone you all out from this, but rather to, collect our thoughts and be able to move forward. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I strongly suggest implementing some mindfulness exercises during the camp day. It's a great way to just kind of reset your campers. I will share my screen in a moment because we do have some mindfulness scripts already developed, like just some easy ones that you can take on the go that are sort of nature-based. But this one, we realized that most of our scripts were meant for you to be outside. And so the one I'm gonna work off of today would work in any kind of location. So we're not gonna lay down for this, but I want you to sit comfortably. Take a deep breath, maybe roll your shoulders if you like. Let your arms and legs just rest in a comfortable position. If you like, I will invite you to close your eyes gently. Next, I want you to begin to notice how your body changes with each breath that you take. Each time you breathe, your belly moves up and your belly moves down. If it's easier, you can put a hand on your belly, or if you want, you can put a stuffed animal there. Each time you breathe, your belly moves. Your hand or your toy rises and then falls. See if you can count 10 breaths that way. Breathing in, 1. Breathing out, 1. When you lose count, don't worry about it. That's normal and it happens to everyone. Come back to whatever number you last remember. Now, I invite you to shift your attention to your day. As you breathe in, focus on your breath as your belly goes up. As you breathe out, focus on something that went well today. Now, picture something about yourself that makes you proud. Breathing in, focus on your belly moving. Breathing out, picture something that makes you proud of yourself. If nothing comes to mind, that sometimes happens. If that's how you feel, picture what you'd wish for yourself instead. Finally, bring someone to mind who makes you happy. Before we end, try one more practice. Breathing in, notice how your belly moves. And now, breathing out, picture someone who makes you happy. As you come to the end of this practice, take a few more deep breaths and start to wiggle your arms, your fingers, your legs and toes. Slowly coming back. Pause and decide what you'd like to do next. It's normal to have thoughts that make us feel scared or bad. We should never ignore anything important, but it's useful to focus on the rest of our lives too. Take a few minutes every day to notice what has gone well and see what happens next. I think Zoom lets this be like an even more quiet and peaceful. Like in my mind, you all are perfectly silent. All right, if you're back with me, give me a thumbs up. Now, if this was a true exercise during camp, we could take a few more minutes with that. That was intended to be like an 8 to 10 minute, maybe at the most, mindfulness session. And that's about as long as you could probably hope for kids in a camp atmosphere. But there are lots of different exercises like that. And we just feel it's really helpful, again, to reset, refocus, transition from one thing to another. At home, when I notice my little ones going kind of crazy, it's really helpful to me to try to relax them, get them in a calmer state. There's also a trick where, now this might be a lot harder with masks on, but you can just demonstrate through your own breathing. When somebody is kind of panicky or flustered, or they're crying, I can just get close to somebody and start to breathe like audibly loud, like focusing on those exhales, exhaling longer than you're inhaling. And you don't even have to tell kids to mimic you or to do as you do. If you just walk up to a child and you start to show yourself calming and taking deep breaths, they'll mimic that. They'll start to mirror that behavior and they'll start to relax as well. So just a helpful, handy tool for you to put in your back pocket. I hope you enjoyed that. We've really enjoyed incorporating more mindfulness exercises into camp, and it's had a lot of positive results. All right, so sort of in the same vein, I am going to share with you my screen here. And we're going to look at not the prettiest document, so bear with me because I'm gonna walk you through this, and not all of it is super important for you right now, but um, I like to have something for everybody to focus on. So I'm going to talk about dynamic sensory profiles and how to support people with different sensory profiles. So it's a sort of an extension of our talk yesterday as well. Everybody is different, and we accept those differences. We invite those differences, and we also need to know how to plan for how to care and support for people with different sensory profiles. So what this means is that we all might be overly sensitive to some input. We might be undersensitive to others. So we think about our senses as sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. We've got other senses too. We have our sense of like proprioception, where our body is in space, like a sense of balance. We have senses of hunger and thirst. And people can really vary on how they experience these different sensory inputs. Some people are overreactive, some are underreactive, and some people, kids in particular, it can be situational. For my kids, it really depends on how much sleep, how tired they are, how hungry they are. So when we look at visual systems, people who are overreactive to visual input, they might experience discomfort with bright light or flashing lights. So there, in each of these little areas, there you'll see a strategies to support. Sunglasses. So visual isn't one that we see a whole lot at camp. The ones that I tend to see most often are auditory and touch sensitivities. So sounds can really impact people in different ways. Overreactive people, it sounds, I'm not saying people overreact. This is just the language, but people who with an overreactive auditory sensory system are going to avoid loud sounds. People with underreactive might seek out loud sounds. Sometimes when my oldest child is really tired, she will just make noise. She just like wants to hear herself making noise, which is, annoying. It's annoying. But I have to remind myself that she's tired. She's reached her sensory limits for the day. She's seeking a certain type of input to soothe herself. You probably all know somebody who either has an overreactive or underreactive sense of smell. So some people get migraines from strong smells. Some people can't smell things at all. Just be cognizant that it's never a good idea to like wear a bunch of cologne if you're going to be in a small group of people. It's not super necessary. And likewise, it's going to be summer and we're going to be sweating and stinking quite a bit. And so it's nice to try to smell pleasant but not like overwhelming for people. I'm going to move down to tactile because, again, this is the other one that I see a lot. So I'll use my daughter, my 5-year-old, as an example again. She started going back to preschool in February, and her first week of preschool, she had all this sensory input every day. It was, she'd been like literally shut up in the house for about a year before that. And so it was a big change for her. And by the end of the day, she was just so overloaded with all of the input that she'd experienced that she would literally throw her body against the furniture in the living room, like throw herself into the couch and like run up and down and just like slam on the walls of the hallway. um, and that was just her seeking out touch and tactile input. Uh, Other people, don't want to touch certain things. So this is an important one to keep in mind with campers. We want to invite them to touch things in nature, but it shouldn't ever be a requirement. Some people just aren't going to want to do that. We have a lot of fidgets that we can provide. If we need more, we can get more. If you have a kid who needs to fidget with something, we will give you a tool or multiple tools that you can try out with that camper during the day and see if they work. So David's got our kit here. I'm going to spotlight you, David, because I know how to do that now. I don't know if it's going to work on people's screens.
It'll at least show me more on the side, I hope. Can people see me?
I think because you're sharing your screen, Savannah, it's making it harder. Yeah, now I see them.
I'll stop for a moment.
Here's a fidget that we use. We've got lots of things like these. There's different balls with different tactile like things on them. There's also some like earmuffs, which are really nice for those who are kind of sensitive to sound and things. So you're welcome to use these earmuffs there's a couple of pairs of these in here. So there's a lot of items like that. You've got this classic fun toy that everyone loves. This thing's full of stuff like that. So if you have anything that you know of that has worked for either children you've worked with in the past or children that and you want to bring it and share something that you would have in your leader bag for your group to use, you're welcome to do that.
Or a recommendation for Renee or Rain to purchase something. Like if you have had a really positive experience with, a certain sensory toy in the past and you want to explore that, absolutely shoot us some recommendations. Nicole at the front desk, has a bunch of fidgets at the front desk too. So she, there's a lot of fun stuff out there to help kids. I've seen kids who, when they're tired or, not having a good day, get pinchy and just start like pinching other people, campers and stuff. And obviously that's not okay. So like, give them something that they can manipulate with their hands in their pocket or out in the open. It can work.
I was definitely one of those kids who always needed something to mess with in my hands. If I was sitting idly, I still to this day can't sit still. So, that goes for staff too. If it's helpful for you to have something, I would encourage it.
Yeah. I will just be honest that my hands are in my hair a lot. I just like always am fidgeting with my hair. That's my weird thing. So this resource is here. We're going to come back to this later. We're going to reach a point after a few days of camp when you're starting to get to know the kids that you have. And then you're going to have some more specific ideas about how to incorporate this information. Basically then we can say, okay, what's the behavior we see? Are there some, ways that we can be proactive about it? So let's see. This is towards the end of this document here. I really like this. This is like planning an outing, planning an adventure for children with all kinds of different sensory profiles. And this is just good planning information. So, come up with your plan, think about the space and the location, what kinds of sensory opportunities or challenges that you might have there. But think about, is your activity going to be structured or free flowing? Transportation is not going to be much of an issue for us. We're not going to get on the bus this year. You can prepare the kiddos by giving them a heads up about what's going to happen. Some children really benefit from knowing their schedule, and we will have our session schedules planned in advance So, theoretically, like David is going to be hopefully emailing those out on a Friday before the next session begins so that campers and their adults will be able to review those session schedules together so they know what to expect. But then every day as a camp leader, it's nice to, as we talked yesterday, just have that moment where you go over what's your day going to be like and what are your expectations for behavior and what's the plan. So some kids super benefit from knowing their schedule. Some kids will want to hold on to a copy of their schedule so they know what is the next thing that's going to happen. As I said earlier, don't make anybody touch anything. If somebody's, not reacting well, if they're not liking the sensory, situation, try to remove them or make that optional. Always reach out if you need more support. We have extra staff this year and 50% fewer kids, less than 50% fewer kids. So we're we're going to be heavy staffed to be able to support each other. This is going to be a great year for the kids as far as our adult to child ratio. I think that's most of what I want to cover. There's some troubleshooting here. So what if a kid's having a meltdown? Look at this. Attempt to control your breathing. I guess I must have learned that trick from somewhere. This is probably where I learned it. So modeling that good, calm behavior. So coming back from a meltdown. The runner, what to do if you have a runner, a kiddo who's withdrawn or avoidant. And then again, some notes about transitions. And the reason I'm not going to go into this in depth with you is because it only gets so far with people until you're actually in the situations. This is going to be really good stuff for us to come back to in our first week staff meeting to just see, behavior check. How is it going? How's behavior management and everything going? Do you have campers who are, posing challenges to you? Or there's probably going to be, at least one in every group. Then there's some classic animal walks back here. So some activity suggestions. Some of this stuff, you could do regularly. You might decide that there are some activities that work really well for you or for your camp experience, your camp group, and you might want to repeat those. And that's okay. We have to go into this with a certain degree of planning and readiness, but also flexibility and willingness to change. Okay, so let me check our agenda here. I think I'm supposed to talk about waste-free lunches in a moment, but I also think it's a good time to bring up CUSR, which is the Champaign-Urbana Special Recreation. And they, as you probably heard the bit on last Wednesday, there was CUSR staff there who kind of talked about their inclusion services. They provide a wide variety of services for inclusion. It's not always just for kids with behavioral or cognitive disabilities, but it can be for physical accommodations as well. Maybe there's a participant in a wheelchair or who uses leg braces. We would work with them to make sure that we can provide, a safe and equitable experience for those kids too. We don't want to leave anybody out, basically. So we have at least one child signed up for our camp this summer who is on the autism spectrum. So they have a formal diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And that adult reached out to me and said that their child had really benefited from a one-on-one aid at school. So in the summertime, that would be, again, something that CUSR does, is providing one-on-one inclusion assistance for kids who need it. So David and I kind of take care of requests at that level. We talk to CUSR. We see if we can find somebody who can come in and help out. That inclusion assistant if and when we have one of those staff working with us, it's important that we welcome them and that we treat them like they're one of our team. We want to, David and I would bring them up to speed, make sure that they understand all of Nature Day Camp and how things work here. They'll travel from different camps throughout the summer, or, maybe they've worked at Champaign Park District programs, but they've never worked at Urbana Park District programs. So we'll get them kind of oriented. Your job is to welcome them, to not try to shove off, certain responsibilities and stuff on them. That you might have an extra adult in your group, but remember that their primary job is to be there to support that camper who needs them. That said, we don't want to just say, this is John. John is Billy's aide. And so Billy needs an aide. Billy needs an extra person here. Like we don't make it like a blatant thing. We don't want kids to feel like they're different than the rest of the group. And sometimes those inclusion assistants can just blend right in, and the rest of the campers won't even question who's this other adult who's here. Just keep in mind, you wouldn't ask the inclusion assistant to like go grab supplies for you inside. You wouldn't ask them to be responsible for your group of kids while you take a restroom break. Okay, those are things you're not going to do. That's the kind of stuff you can do amongst each other as staff together. Hey, blue leader, I need to use the restroom. Will you watch my kids for a minute? Or, something. Camp assistant, can you help me out with this? But, don't ask those extra kind of tasks of that inclusion assistant. And again, we'll broach that more as we need to. But I feel really lucky that we have that service in town. It's so quiet. Are you guys all still meditating, or do you have any questions?
I'll ask a question real quick. We keep talking about our like colors. When do we get to know like what color we get to be? It's like kind of exciting, but not really.
I know, right?
That's a really
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Sorry, Savannah. I only was going to respond to this because I was just thinking about it. We have an idea of what your colors are going to be, but we're waiting to hear. I'm in communication with one. Oops, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. I'm in communication with one other potential leader. We may only have 4 leaders this year, which we're pretty sure we can make work without a problem. On the other hand, we may have a 5th leader. I'm communicating with this person, and once that is resolved, we'll have a better idea of like what each leader's camp group will look like, whether we have 4 or 5 leaders. So I'm supposed to talk with this person again, either after this training or in the morning. So more on that later this week. I know that it's kind of, it is an exciting part.
Thank you.
I haven't been looking at the chat, so I was just catching up on some of the chat, and Renee mentioned a glitter jar for mindfulness. Renee, Chelsea just made that suggestion to David and I earlier too. Like you shake up the glitter jar and then you watch the glitter fall. I just told David and Rain how glitter is the devil and I want them to throw it all away because I don't want us to contribute microplastics to the environment. So I was like moving towards like, let's go glitter free and not ever have glitter here again. But maybe our last use of our glitter in our glitter collection can just be used to pre-make some of these.
Like if we can keep it contained.
Glitter, then you can, this can be the great way to use it up. And I'm not recommending that children make glitter jars by any stretch of the imagination, like seal that stuff shut. But it can, especially for kids with ADHD and sensory processing issues, that ability to focus on something that's slow moving and things like that can be really super helpful. So
I love it. And, Renee, as our supervisors in charge of resources, maybe you can even make those for all of our camp groups next week when you're in the office.
Oh, darn, I have to play with glitter.
Don't get me wrong. I love the way glitter looks. I like shiny things. I do like glitter, but like, I'm just scared for the environment. It rubs off on everything.
It's true.
Yeah. as much as possible, really trying to move towards being greener. Oh, look, I can segue. I was going to segue you one way, but I'm going to segue you a different way now. Let's see here. So I am going to share this summer camp handbook with you, but while we're on the subject, this is the Park District's Climate Action, Resilience, Education, and Sustainability Plan. As you probably heard me talk about, I'm trying to make my screen bigger, I'm sorry. There we go. You probably heard me talk about this on the Wednesday evening training last week. I'm really proud of this because I helped to organize the Park District staff in creating this climate action plan. And it is a labor of love, and it is going to, hopefully steer our Park District into more concerted, environmentally responsible behavior. So I'm just kind of giving you a little glimpse of this. I will upload this somewhere on the Google Drive if you're interested in looking further. But it is also available on the Park District website. So we have all these goals and objectives in the CARES plan, and a couple of them pertain to camp. These are what the goals and objectives look like. And on the far right column here, it says responsible staff groups. And there's a couple goals that we came up with specifically during the summer camp season, because we have an opportunity to see these kids for multiple weeks in a row that we don't have that opportunity for a lot of the rest of the year. So we really can make a larger impact on these kids when we spend all day with them every day. So this is not something that needs to be done immediately, but it's something I want us to start thinking about. So this objective is to increase kids' knowledge and experience with reducing waste during district summer camps. We've got a lot of people working during the summer season. As you can imagine, we can create a lot of waste just from meal times. So one strategy we want to employ is teaching kids how to compost their food scraps during summer camp. We're hoping that some of our camps can produce usable compost and then decide what to do with it. This plan just came out. So again, we don't have to, make sure that we're doing this, like composting all of our food waste this summer, but we can take steps towards moving this way. Like maybe as an activity, you might consider making a landfill in a container for kids, or utilizing our vermicomposting worms to do some demonstrations, or collecting compost in a bucket. Like, who knows? We'll have to, when we all start planning together, maybe we can plan. We have a whole session about giving back to nature. Maybe that's something that we can build up to some good composting demonstrations during that session. And the next strategy under this objective is to encourage recycling and waste-free lunches. I really try to avoid having the recycling go into the garbage, and likewise, we want to avoid the garbage going into the recycling, because U-Cycle won't recycle the recycling if it's full of trash. If you have a whole bunch of cans in a bag, but then someone throws a bunch of leftover lunch in there, unfortunately, it's going to go to the trash. And so anytime you can model recycling, model waste-free lunches, maybe even make it a mini game activity lesson, something like that. I'm meeting this objective right now. I included information about how to pack a waste-free lunch in our camp handbook. So these are, I believe they're probably the only ones that directly apply to camp, but I thought I would bring that to your attention, that, it is something that we really want to do better as a park district. Any questions about the CARES plan or composting, recycling? If you have ideas, I'm really looking forward to hearing them next week when we're planning together. All right, so this is our summer camp handbook. This applies to all Park District summer camps. So you all are working in a nature camp, but there is also a sports camp and an arts camp. And at arts camp, there is a preschool arts camp, and that's where I'm sending my oldest child this summer. So this is the document that we give to all of the adults who have kids registered. There's a lot in here. I'm just going to cover it, briefly, but I want you to know that this exists, and that if camp parents have questions, this is a good place to direct them for more information.
And where can parents find this, or excuse me, where can adults and caregivers find this?
So on our website, you know what? I think I've got our website open here. So the CARES plan is in Green Initiatives, which is in About Us, Green Initiatives. That's where the CARES plan is. If you go over to programs and you drop down to summer camps, this is our summer camp page. It's got links to registration, and there's the link to the handbook. It talks about ePact, which is going to be our online portal for camper information management. It has the request for a CUSR inclusion assistance. So that's the request that would come to David from the parent, and then he would contact CUSR. And we have a medication administration packet, which I can also show you. If a child is receiving medication during the camp day, that's something that David and Rain would be in charge of managing, that medication administration. I just want you to know it exists, and that you should never give medication to a kiddo. And if a parent walks up to you with medication and says, give this to my child, they need to be directed to Rain and David. All right, so I know we've talked about COVID-19 protocols. It's in several locations. The basic message is we are asking the same thing of our staff and of our campers. The requirements are the same. We're going to wear masks inside, except during meal and snack times, at which time we're going to be distanced apart from each other. Masks may be removed outdoors when those kids can stay apart from each other. So I know I mentioned this before, you might be vaccinated. Thank you if you are, we really appreciate that. But the kids are definitely not going to be vaccinated, right? There's no vaccine for them yet. So we need to make sure that they are being safe. And of course, stay home if you're symptomatic, lots of hand washing and hand sanitizer. Judy covered some of this yesterday as well. What do we do in the case of a COVID-19 outbreak at camp? There's rules. We've got a system. It's all in place. It's all outlined here. I am trying not to make you dizzy, but I just want to show you what else is included. It talks about signing in and signing out kids from camp, which will be done on tablets. These are the iPads we'll use for camp. Any adult can sign in a camper. Sometimes campers get permission slips from their adults. This would go through David to approve it, but to sign themselves in because they're going to ride their bike to camp. And so we can make individual exceptions, but all that needs to be arranged with the child's adults and David. Otherwise, an adult has to sign in the child. Children cannot sign themselves into camp. I don't care who signs in that child, but someone's going to drop them off. And the reason for that is that it gives you a point of contact for communication if need be. It can be hard sometimes to talk to some of those adults about, maybe a certain behavior happened or an incident happened and you need to just talk to them about it. This gives you an opportunity, having them not just ditch the kids at the front and leave, it's an important way for us to make sure that everybody's prepared to stay for the camp day. Signing out, only authorized adults with a photo are going to be allowed to sign out a camper. So we say it multiple times, picture ID is required. The great thing about ePact, which will be a brand new thing that we're using this year, is that when the adult creates the account for their child, they designate, you know, all these different people who could pick up their kids. So like maybe they have grandma on there and their neighbor Susie is on there and their friend is on there. They can upload pictures of each of those people who are allowed to pick up their kid. So now someone comes to pick up their child from you, you can look at the person's face, you can look at the picture in the ePact account, and you can say, you're good to go. Or if there is not a picture in the ePact account, they have to show a government issued photo ID. It causes, you know, there's going to be at least one parent every summer who's like, why are you doing this? And also thank you. Because they're annoyed because they left their ID at home. I think during spring break day camp, some people, I believe if they didn't have photos at pickup time, some of the staff were able to actually use the iPad and take the picture right there and add it to their account. So that's a really nice, if we can figure out how to do that, that's a really nice customer friendly way to be. There are late pickup fees. So regular camp day is over at 3 p.m. By 3:10, if that child's not picked up, we are charging $5 for every 5 minutes. Somebody's, you know, you all need to go on with your day and maintain your schedules, right? So if you're a camp leader who needs to move on at 3:15 to the next thing, you know, either it's the end of your day or you're cleaning up, or maybe you have a staff meeting, you got to go. Someone else has got to watch that kid. We will have late pickup slips for you to fill out so that we know we can communicate with the front desk. How late were they? How much money do they owe? Extended camp exists for those adults who can't pick up their kids at 3 p.m. because it's just not feasible all the time. So extended camp is from 3 to 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon. It's already an extension, and therefore they have to pick up by 5:35 at the latest, or again, $5 for every 5 minutes. Any questions? We recognize that sometimes kids are going to be dropped off late, or they're going to have to be picked up early. And we're asking the adults to communicate with Rain, primarily the camp supervisor, to make arrangements so that, you know, if maybe your camp group is going to go into Crystal Lake Park, but some kid's going to get picked up early that day, you know, for an appointment, and we can leave that child at the nature center while the rest of the group goes, but you need, you know, the camp supervisor to kind of coordinate things like that. You know, we can pull a kid out from their group early, but this is one of the reasons why it's important that we always know where camp groups are. We know how to find those kids who, you know, maybe sometimes some kids just get dropped off late and their group is already gone off and doing something. You know, we'll need to be able to find your group so that we can unite that camper. In cases like that, I'm not sure if we'll be able to use a different iPad to sign in or out those children who are departing early or arriving late. But there are circumstances where I, you know, will allow a staff member to sign a child in or out. All right, so this is the section about packing a waste-free lunch. So these recommendations go for all of us. Lots of times, if you're trying to be low waste, you can also save money. By buying food in bulk, it often has less packaging. So instead of buying like individually packaged chips, buy a big bag of chips and put it in a reusable container, what portion you're going to eat. I've talked about this before. This is mostly just a reminder. The gift shop at the Nature Center sells a bunch of reusable containers and straws and stuff like that. When I bring my lunch to work, I have a lot of old bandanas and like I use them as cloth napkins. You can make cloth napkins with your kids at camp. We've had leaders who've done that before, like take some scrap fabric, Maybe they can even like sew up the edges or decorate it, somehow paint it, embroider it, whatever you want. But then they've got their own like cloth napkin that they can bring every day with their lunch. In a typical summer, we would be taking kids to the pool twice a week. And we're not doing that this year, simply to limit contact between camp kids and the public. Instead, we want to have regular water play days, and the timing of which, it's nice when you can say maybe every Wednesday is our water play day. Then it's reliable so that, the adults know that that's a day they should send their campers with a towel or some dry clothes. It might just be that tomorrow is going to be 95 degrees out, and we know that the weather is going to be bad, and we plan like, at the last minute, we'll say, all right, our other plans are pushed back or, delayed, and we're going to just do some more water play today. So we'll have like a section outdoors where the hose is that we can fill up a baby pool, not really for swimming, but more for like activities like dipping sponges in. I'm also anti-water balloon. I'm such a killjoy, right? Unless you pick up every piece. We definitely have had water balloons plenty at camp, but I really, really insist that every single piece of that get picked up from the lawn, or else I'm going to say no more. Sorry. But we're going to get like squirty toys. And I mean, there's lots of water games you can play. Kind of on that note, there's a really popular camp game called Drip, Drip, Drop, where you take a sponge and you it's like Duck, Duck, Goose. Right. So you like drop a drop of water from the sponge on your friend's head. But if you squeeze the whole sponge on them, then they have to run around. A bunch of kids hate that game. A bunch of kids cannot stand that game. So just be cautious that, it kind of goes along with that sensory awareness stuff. Some of your kids are not going to want a sponge loosened on their head, so just be cognizant, get to know your kids, think about alternates for activities where you think maybe some kids wouldn't enjoy that. Maybe you have two options or something.
I know you can't see the chat right now, Savannah, but Olivia had a great suggestion about the water balloons. Using clean, balled up socks can make good water balloons. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. We've talked a bit about hazardous and rainy weather. Basically, if it's just sprinkling, if there's just a little drizzle out, you can be outside with your kids. We only need to bring them indoors if there's thunder or lightning, or other types of severe weather, like really high winds or something. But, we try to be outside as much as possible. All right, items that are not allowed at camp. Weapons, portable electronics, unless they're used for sensory purposes. Some adults have asked for exceptions for their kid to have a tablet or something. And, we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. Valuable items, sometimes like things just become coveted at camp. Like maybe it's Pokemon cards this year or something. If kids are fighting about this kind of thing and it's causing a lot of disturbance and disruption, then we may create a rule later that we're not going to have, said item at camp any longer. But for now, it's just in general, you don't want them to bring like cash money. Sometimes kids will just pull out money or something valuable and you're like, what are you doing? Put that away. They may have cell phones, but not use them unless there's an emergency. We do state that we're not responsible for lost items, and we tell the adults time and again to label everything. Label it. Nicole also was planning to have like a labeling station inside the lobby on the first day of every session. So they could take some masking tape and label, like not everybody wants to write with Sharpie on your object or clothing, but you can write on a piece of masking tape and put it on the object.
James asked if we would have like, water squirters or anything. And I just mentioned in the chat, we're not going to have like water guns, but we do have these like long tubes that you may have seen before. It's like this kind of thing where you dunk it in the water, pull it back, and then you can like blast the water with the tube. So I think we have some things like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I take the no weapons thing very seriously. Like kids will turn things into weapons, and some of that's just kids' nature, leave it to them and it's like Lord of the Flies. But our job is to say, hey, that's a stick, and you can pretend for it to be a number of things, but your stick cannot be a gun and your stick cannot be a sword. Sometimes kids are like, it's a laser. I can kind of wiggle with some of that, but basically I don't like even playing scenarios that are, where somebody has a weapon and somebody's like aiming to harm somebody else. Like that's not the kind of game I want to foster at camp. And I know that they all are going to play their own way at home, and that's fine. All right. This is an important piece that I definitely want to share with you. So these are across the board. These are our Park District rules and behavior guidelines for all of our programs, but especially camp. If we're in a situation where people can't abide by these, we have a form, a behavior management form, where we can document unwanted behaviors and kind of have a formal way of saying, all right, here's your, you've had one strike, what's going to happen next? But we'll get to that when it's necessary. Basically, the expectations are all phrased in positive ways. Use your walking feet, do your best, use kind words, gentle hands and feet. I often say, helping hands only, please. Use inside voices. Like it's all framed to be positive. We try to revolve camp around choices, helping campers learn to make the best choices for themselves and everybody around them. So we want to recognize good behavior, sometimes just calling out those kids and saying, I like what you're doing. I like what they're doing. That's good behavior. This is what I want to see right now. The other kids will just kind of fall in line with that. They want your approval. They think you are really cool. They want to make you happy for the most part. There are some major rule violations. So that includes like aggressive physical contact, verbal abuse, destruction of property. That's more than just a timeout. That's a like time away from the group, and we're gonna have a conference. So our consequences, are kind of laid out here. Just remember that you have a lot of tools at your hands before you reach the point of timeout. There's positive reinforcement first. There's redirection, where you just give them something else to do. Like, hey, why don't we see what's going on over here? Or, hey, can you help me with this task? There's a lot of, and then maybe a warning, okay, this is the last time I'm going to tell you this, or then you're going to get a timeout. So we build up to that. And then if somebody's getting, multiple timeouts, at that point, you really need to be talking to the camp supervisor, and we're going to start coming up with a plan to help this child be more successful. All right. I think that's it. David, was there anything else in particular that you wanted me to cover in the handbook pertaining to Nature Day Camp?
I don't think so. I want to make sure there's nothing in the chat that I'm missing. Yeah, does anyone have any questions about the like session schedule, the plans for does anyone have any questions about the session schedule or anything else Savannah went over? So a reminder, we have 2-week sessions. I think, I can't even remember what the first session's theme is. Here, I have it right here. The first one is woodlands and wetlands. So a lot of folks may be like eager to like get started with planning. And one thing I did want to mention, Savannah, was you had some great suggestions about like different activities that you could do with your groups, like making a, you know, a reusable napkin, cloth napkin, or a reusable lunch thing. I would encourage folks to, if that sounds like something that you really would enjoy doing, you can start taking some notes, you know, for yourself about like activities that you might want to start planning at the end of this week. We hope to be able to dedicate some time to start planning some of these session, you know, day by day activities and things. So try to hold off, you know, if you've got all kinds of ideas or are really excited about some of the things Savannah's saying, but feel free to take some, you know, some notes for yourself if something sounds like it might be an activity you'd want to do.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think I covered everything. I do have in this document a set of nature camp goals for our campers. So that's the last thing I'll cover, and then I'll let David take over. Our goals are to foster sensory exploration and curiosity through hands-on projects and play, to stimulate intellectual and physical development while participating in authentic learning opportunities, to develop respect and appreciation for the natural world through meaningful place-based experiences. There's a lot of jargon in here. I'm happy to talk this out with you more. You know, basically we want campers to feel a sense of belonging in place, to feel like Busey Woods is their special spot, that Crystal Lake is where they like to hang out. You know, we want them to feel connected to their community, welcome, at home. Of course, developing social skills as they make friends and work together, and developing self-confidence, and again, that sense of belonging. Right. So before David takes over, I'll just say, you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm, you know, transitioning out of the role that David's in now. So I have been, you know, the person coordinating this camp. Some of the reason I talk a lot is because I'm sort of still training David on some things. David's got a super good handle on camp. He and I have a very good communication with each other. But I'll be a little bit more involved in camp, especially during the training process, than I normally would be as program manager. And again, you know, David he's learning our camp program. He's learning as we're training, you know, how training goes and everything. Rain has actually been here longer than either of us. She's your camp supervisor this year. So she's been working for the park district since she was 16. And we all have a lot to learn from each other, but, you know, just be cognizant that we all do, as the summer gets rolling, we're going to have different roles to play. So I will become less involved with camp. I'm David's direct supervisor. David will, you know, be more involved with camp at the front end, the beginning of the summer, and, you know, perhaps a little bit less involved later in the summer, as Rain and Renee really take over as supervisors. So just keep in mind, you know, you're welcome to go to David now, but starting next week, we're going to start to really, you know, try to establish those relationships more, where camp leaders are going directly to their supervisor, Rain, where camp assistants are going to Renee. And then, you know, Rain and Renee would go to David, and David will come to me. If you're feeling uncomfortable to talk to a certain person or the person who is your supervisor, you're absolutely welcome to talk to another one of us if that makes you more comfortable. But all right, that's all. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to probably go camera off here because I have another meeting tonight as well, but I'll be listening in.
Thanks a bunch, Savannah. Awesome. Savannah put together the handbook or updated it for this year. So thanks a bunch for going through that with everyone. That handbook is available on the Google Drive, in addition to that spot on the UPD website that Savannah showed. So the handbook is in the folder called manuals, I believe. Here, let me double check that. Yep, so if you go to summer camp staff training and then staff manual in that Google Drive, you can find the handbook along with all of the other PDFs that we have kind of separated out from the larger staff manual. With that, let me go back here where I was. I want to give us a quick movement break in just a minute. Before we do that, I'll just do a quick reminder. Time off requests for the summer. I've already received some from some staff. If you know that you are going to need a day or longer off anytime during the camp season, email is the best way for you all to submit time off requests to me. I prefer to get them via email. If you text me or call me, I'll probably tell you, or, if we talk about it in person, I'll probably tell you to send me an email. That's just going to help me keep track of it better, and then it'll be in a calendar. So if we've communicated about that at all recently, I already have you in the calendar for your time off request. If we talked about it in an interview or something, but we haven't communicated about it again since then, I'll ask you to go ahead and send me an email with any time off requests you'll have for the summer. And that goes for the future too. So ongoing, if you find that you'll have a conflict or something that you didn't expect, do let me know ASAP, because we can kind of approve those on a case-by-case basis, depending on if other staff have asked for that time off. So the sooner the better. Makes sense to everybody, and everyone who's asked for time off requests so far. You're good. We've got you. It's not going to cause conflicts right now. So if you've asked for some time off already, that is hereby approved. Great. So let's take maybe 3 minutes. If you need to use the restroom, go use the restroom real quick. If you want to turn your camera off and stretch, if you want to stand up, let's just take a couple of minutes here, and then I've got a kind of a long thing for us to go through. So I want everyone to be ready to go. And if you don't need to do any stretching or anything, if you're feeling good, feel free to ask questions for me right now. I can answer any questions that people have had. Hey, Ryan, I wanted to talk with you and Ashley, actually. I was going to let you know that you're welcome to attend one of the CPR trainings if you'd like to. I think Ashley may have mentioned that the one we're planning for June would be a good one for you. So I think we definitely, if you still want to do that, we can definitely get you in on it. So I think I tried to connect with Ashley earlier this week, and we, oh, hi, Ashley. And I think I missed you.
I thought I emailed you back, but maybe it didn't send. But I was thinking maybe the June one would be a good fit, and then just let me know when that one is, whenever it's scheduled, and we'll.
Okay, great. I did get that email, and then I had missed a call from someone, I think yesterday, and I wasn't sure if it was you or not. So I think we're asking for that one to be on June 3rd. It's not set in stone yet. We're waiting to still hear back from Jessica, but that might be a good thing to plan for. I'm pretty sure we're expecting it to be June 3rd from in the evening, probably from 5 to 8:30. So if you want to tentatively put that down, it could change if that doesn't work for everyone else, but it'll be during that week.
Okay, I'll put that on my calendar, and then just let me know once it's.
Hey, David.
Hey, Ryan. What's up?
When I start working, who do I go to for like my duties? Do I go to you, or do I go to Wayne?
That's a really good question, Ryan. And you can come to me. And I can definitely help with what you have to do, but you can also go to Renee. I think we're going to have Renee be a person that all of our camp assistants like yourself can go to kind of on a day-to-day. So there's Renee here. I'll spotlight her so she can say hi real quick. Let's see.
There she is.
Oh, that might have just pinned it for me. I don't know if I can spotlight her, but if you want to talk, Renee, it might make you the speaker. I think you're muted right now.
Hi, yes, this is hi. Oh, now I'm spotlighted too. Okay. Hello. I'm Renee, and I'm going to be working with the assistants this summer. Super excited to do that. And going to be getting your supplies. So if anybody knows of fidgets, I've probably tried them all, but there's always something out there that I haven't tried yet. So, so yeah, I am looking forward to meeting everybody when I'm finally in Illinois. So.
Perfect. Thanks. And you can either remove your own spotlight. Oh, there you go. So Ryan, that's Renee, and she's going to be at camp every day, and she'll be a really good person. You might see her more. So she'll be another good person for you to go to for tasks and things like that, in addition to myself.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great question, Ryan. And that's actually true. I'm glad you asked, because that's true for all of our camp assistants this year. You will kind of, Renee will be your day-to-day person, as Rain is to the camp leaders. Renee will be to the camp assistants. So yeah, really good thing to mention. Okay, I think most folks are back now. We'll go ahead and kind of move into this next part. I'm going to be sharing my screen here in just a moment. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to go over just our tobacco use policy and drug-free workplace policy here at the Park District. So it is the policy of the district to control tobacco use on all of the district's parks and facilities to provide a healthy and safe work environment. So this includes chewing tobacco, smoking cigarettes or other tobacco products, lighting tobacco products, or carrying any kind of lighted or smoldering pipe, cigar, cigarette, anything like that. So this tobacco-free workplace policy applies to all areas of facilities and work sponsored by the district. So what that means to you is if you are in and around the nature center, we have a no tobacco policy. So if you are a person who uses tobacco, try to, avoid using it at work around the nature center. If you need to, leave on a break or something, that's something that we can work out, but we want to be away from our public spaces for those types of things. So this includes any vehicles or equipment owned or operated by the district. I don't think anyone here will be driving Park District vehicles, but it does include all intermittent and seasonal employees as well. So this will apply to everyone. Yeah, so tobacco use is permitted outdoors during breaks or when off duty, at least 15 feet from a door, and when there are no children present. So what I said before kind of still applies, because there will be children present around the camp space in lots of places. And unless you coordinate with every leader, it's going to be hard for you to say if you're 15 feet away from the building, whether or not children will be present. So the farther away you can go, the better for that. Okay, next part here is our drug-free workplace policy. So this applies to drugs and alcohol. So this also, I'll say, applies to cannabis products or marijuana use, because though we are in a legal, state, we're treating it the same way as alcohol, right? Alcohol is also a legal substance that we don't want anywhere around camp or the nature center here. So what you do on your own time at your home is totally, oops. Oh yes, and Savannah says also prescription drugs that impact your physical or mental state. So, if you're at home on your own and you're engaging in legal activities, that's your thing. But if you are in or around the Park District facilities, if you are on nature center grounds, if you are scheduled for work or working, we are going to ask that you have no drugs, alcohol, legal or otherwise, including being under the influence of prescription drugs that do affect, mental or physical states. So if they are legally prescribed to you and you're taking those drugs, just talk with us if you think that might have some effect on your mental or physical state. If it's something that you're used to taking every day and it's not going to have a large effect on you, then that's probably a different scenario. So employees are prohibited from consuming or being under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances anytime during the workday, including unpaid lunch breaks, while operating district equipment or a district-owned or rented vehicle. So this is a safety thing, right? Any employee who does violate this policy will be subject to appropriate disciplinary action. up to and including termination. So I know that sounds scary, but I don't think this is going to be a big issue for us, but it is important to discuss just because it is a district policy. So anyone have any questions about tobacco use policy, drug-free workplace policy? Excellent. Okay. Sorry about that. I've got boring stuff to go over today, but it's important stuff. And so the next thing that I'm going to work through is our bloodborne pathogens training. And this one's kind of beefy. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I have a PowerPoint for this part that we're going to go over. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm going to monitor the chat for you, David.
Thank you, Savannah. All right, so bloodborne pathogens training, first aid and maintenance. Let's go ahead and dive into this. The objective of this training session is to protect your health and the health of your coworkers. By the end of this session, you will be able to do all of these things: identify bloodborne pathogens, understand how diseases are transmitted, determine your risk of exposure, protect yourself from that exposure, respond appropriately, and understand your right to medical evaluations. So let's start by discussing what bloodborne pathogens are. Bloodborne pathogens are defined by OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, as microorganisms present in human blood that can cause diseases. So, such organisms include viruses such as hepatitis and the flu, bacteria such as tuberculosis and gonorrhea, parasites like malaria and trichinosis, and certain fungi. Some of the primary workplace pathogens that are common are HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, which causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS, hepatitis B, and also hepatitis C virus. So we'll go into some details about those. Savannah, if you do stay on, would you mind giving me a time update at 4:15, if in case I lose track of time?
Yeah, absolutely. And, don't feel like you have to go too in depth on this stuff. We can always leave the presentation accessible to everybody later.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a really good tip. This does go into detail about some of these common viruses, HIV, which is the virus that leads to AIDS. A person can carry HIV for a long time without symptoms developing and it turning into full-blown AIDS. The hepatitis B virus can lead to chronic liver disease, liver cancer, and there are approximately 140 to 320,000 new infections each year. So that's a fairly common one. There are over 1 million people infected. You can see some of the symptoms here. There is a vaccine available for Hep B, which is really important. Hep C is the most common chronic bloodborne infection. Oops, sorry about that. Hep B, Hep C. So Hep C is the most common one. And then there is treatment available that is marginally effective. You can see some of the symptoms that that virus can induce. How are pathogens like this transmitted? In a work environment like ours, contaminated blood is most likely to enter your bloodstream through one of the following routes of entry: contaminated sharp objects or needles, broken skin and contact with other individuals with broken skin, or contact with surfaces and substances, or through your mucous membranes, eyes, mouth, or nose. This is a less easily transmittable way for most viruses, but it is still possible. These viruses have to get into your bloodstream because they are bloodborne pathogens. So directly to the bloodstream is obviously going to be more of an immediate threat than a mucous membrane, like your eyes, nose, and mouth. So some routes of exposure you can see here. Exposure to bloodborne pathogens or potentially infectious bodily fluids in a work environment like ours is pretty limited, but we are working with campers and we are, sometimes going to need to see to their first aid needs. So contact with blood while administering first aid is a possibility here. You want to make sure that any cuts or open skin that you have on your body is covered, and you want to watch for your safety and take care of yourself before administering first aid to other individuals. That's one really important aspect of first aid, checking the environment around you and yourself to make sure it's safe for you to administer that first aid. Touching a contaminated surface or being assigned to clean up blood are other ways that you could be exposed to this. I would say, well, we'll talk a little bit about cleanup kits a little bit later, but I would say if there is blood to be cleaned up, talk to myself or Rain about that. Here are another couple of routes of exposure. I would say probably the easiest one that we would have is that administering first aid to kids, to campers. So, are there any questions right now about the definition of bloodborne pathogens, the transmission of bloodborne pathogens, or how you could potentially be exposed in our camp environment? Give a second for anything to come in the chat before moving on. Okay. We'll have a little, if we have time, we'll have some questions after I get through this. So pay attention if you want to get those correct. Bloodborne pathogens law, the federal bloodborne pathogens rule are enforced by OSHA and require employers with workers who are at risk of exposure in the workplace that we provide you with a written exposure control plan, engineering and work practice controls, personal protective equipment, and training. So the training aspect of it is right now, I believe we do have a written exposure control plan located under the front desk of our nature center. We also have safety data sheets located under there for, I think that's mostly for use with chemicals. And then we do provide personal protective equipment as well. So each leader will be equipped with their own first aid kit, and there should be some PPE in there. If there's not, we do have PPE up at the front desk as well. Here are a few more things that are required by law. And I believe that we, meet all of these requirements. So we have equipment and procedures. There is a free Hep B vaccination, I think, that can be, well, I'm actually not sure about the free vaccination. If Savannah's still here, maybe she can speak to that. It might be something that's provided through the employee assistance program at the Park District or just through the marketplace healthcare plan. Savannah, do you know anything about that?
I don't know. It's definitely not a requirement nor something that we can provide to people.
Okay. Well, if you have
I
concerns,
believe you can get it through your primary care physician.
okay. If there are any concerns about that, you're welcome to reach out to me. So protect yourself, review the EPC and OSHA regulations. As I said, I believe our exposure control plans and all of our safety plans are located underneath the front desk area. Nicole can point those out to you if you're here and would like to review those. Use personal protective equipment, take universal precautions, follow safe work practices. Consider getting the Hep B vaccination if you haven't already. I think I got mine not too long ago. So those are some good tips. You're welcome to come back to this document at any time to review some of those. What is the exposure control plan? So it identifies jobs and tasks for potential exposure. You can read through this. It describes using PPE correctly. It outlines the training requirements, like this training that we're going through right now. We have placement of signs and labels throughout the nature center, and we have plans for decontaminating things. So if you feel that you have something that needs to be decontaminated, that has been exposed to either blood or bodily fluids, mucus of some sort, and you are concerned with that, we can sanitize that. We have bodily fluid cleanup kits that are available. Also underneath that front desk, there's a lot of good stuff underneath the front desk in the reception area. So you have biohazard bags, and here there are sanitizing agents. There are scoops and germicidal wipes, gloves as well. So you have access to these. And this is something that, you know, any and all of us could do. So there's not going to be a designated person to clean up bodily fluids. You know, we work in a camp with lots of kids. Even if it's not blood, there are bodily fluids that will come and end up on the floor sometimes. So it's not one person's job to be the bodily fluid cleanup person. We're not putting that on one individual, one human. I can be available to do that. I want you to all feel comfortable to be able to do that. Whoever's kind of the most, you know, if you have somewhere you have to be, if you're checking in a camper or you're leading your group, maybe you find myself or Rain, maybe you find a camp assistant who needs a task to do, but it's not going to be on one person to do those sorts of cleanups. So this is also something that can be used and is underneath the front desk. This is that stuff that if you've ever seen it in a school used to clean up like vomit or something like that, you pour it on the fluidy thing and it kind of turns it into a solid. So it's a little easier to clean up. Not the most fun thing to think about, but it's something that we do need to keep in mind and kind of be, you know, be open to doing those things, because we are working with young kids and it doesn't need to fall on one person. So the EPC, that exposure control plan describes how biohazard waste is handled and the record keeping requirements. So those are kinds of things that if we do have to clean up a spill or something, we'll likely keep records of it, and we'll dispose of that in that biohazard bag. Okay, take universal precautions. So OSHA describes universal precautions as an approach to infection control. All human blood and certain human bodily fluids are treated as if known to be infectious for these viruses and things that we've described, HIV, HPV, and other bloodborne pathogens. So just assume that anything that you're coming into contact with, the safest thing to do is assume as if it is an infected bodily fluid. Even if you don't think it might be, the safest thing to do is assume and use a barrier for protection. Use gloves, masks, eyewear if needed to avoid contact with those fluids. And then we're going to, as quickly as possible, clean up and decontaminate surfaces and equipment. Let's see, I'm just going to check my time here. Okay, so using PPE. PPE, or personal protective equipment, is a vital part of preventing exposure to bloodborne pathogens. So remember, the concept of using universal precautions includes avoiding contact with all potentially contaminated blood or bodily fluids. So if you're cleaning it up, or if you are administering first aid, one of the probably the best way to avoid direct contact with that is to use your PPE. So use gloves when applying bandages or cleaning up. Eyewear or masks can protect against splashes if there is, you know, a puddle of something. Protective clothing or aprons can also protect against these types of things. Gloves and potentially masks are probably going to be the two biggest ones. So some of this is covered in your CPR training, PPE continued. You know, one thing that's kind of lucky is we will have masks on us. So that's useful. If you would like to use a different mask, we I believe have those available in these kits. Using a CPR mask is important. Again, that'll probably be discussed in your CPR course, or if you've already done it. My understanding is that doing life-saving breaths is kind of varies from trainer to trainer and situation to situation. So definitely go by the advice given in your CPR training course, and be prepared to use impromptu barriers if you need one. Avoid puncture wounds. So use tongs, forceps, or similar tools to pick up contaminated items if something has, bodily fluids on it, especially with sharp objects. All right, so some safe work practice do's. These are common safe work practices that will help prevent exposure to potentially infected blood and bodily fluids. So you can see these here: removing contaminated clothing and PPE as soon as possible, but definitely before you leave the work area. And then washing hands a lot is something that we're going to be doing really normally. So wash your skin in that area, clean and disinfect tools and contaminated equipment, wash your eyes and skin immediately after exposure. If you have direct exposure, stop and go wash. If required, seek medical attention to allow healthcare professionals to determine if a follow-up is required. So this might be something that you would fill an incident report out for if you did come into contact with some of those contaminated bodily fluids. You may want to seek medical attention just to give yourself the all clear. And I would say that that is a really good example of something that you could fill out an incident report for, just so we have a record of that. Double glove, dispose of contaminated items properly. Both of those are good do's. Don'ts, safe work practices don'ts. So you can see these. Don't touch your mouth. Don't eat, drink, use cosmetics, touching your face or other personal items in any work areas where there is the possibility of exposure to blood. These are kind of common sense, right? Do not place or store food on bathroom shelves, cabinets, countertops, or work surfaces in anywhere where blood or bodily fluids you've known that they have occurred, or you feel like they could easily occur. So bathrooms are a really good one. Okay, so are there any questions about this part, about the ECP, otherwise known as the Exposure Control Plan? Questions about PPE or safe practices? Okay. I know this part can be kind of dry, but it's important stuff again, so bear with me here. We're getting close to the end. Oops. So an important part of preventing exposure to those infected bodily fluids and bloodborne pathogens is to properly clean and disinfect all of our work surfaces, equipment, and tools. So we talked a little bit about this already. I showed you the bodily fluid disposal kit. So they have either latex or nitrile gloves. They have some PPE in there. And then there is additional PPE located underneath the that front desk reception area. So you can see what it suggests to use for a disinfectant for spills, a 10% bleach solution. We can help you get that together if needed. You'll use your bodily fluid disposal kit, and you'll immediately dispose of those contaminated items. So any gloves you use, any biohazard bag you use, any contaminated disposable items should be immediately disposed. And we can put the biohazard bags, once your contaminated fluid is in the biohazard bag, those can be placed into our trash cans. They just have to be in that biohazard bag first. Okay, any other questions about the cleanup kits or anything like that? Okay. So if you are decontaminating things using sharp objects, do not use your hands. Try to use tongs, a dustpan, a brush, a broom, something like that. Don't pick up sharp objects with your hands. And then use something absorbent or this stuff to soak up the additional residual liquid. So again, this stuff is just something that's poured on liquids, turns it into more of a solid thing that's easier to clean up. Disinfect all surfaces and allow them time to dry before using them again. So that is what you would use, either a designated disinfectant or that 10% bleach solution. I think we probably have some other types of solutions that we will use instead of bleach, but we have something that is effective for disinfecting. Biohazard disposal. I talked a little bit about this. Any contaminated items that could contain bodily fluids or release bloodborne pathogens should be placed in a biohazard bag. And again, in this kit at the bottom, you'll see a red bag. That's your biohazard bag. So those are located in these kits. Any contaminated sharp objects should go in that bag. Any items caked with dried blood or fluids, any pathological or microbiological wastes should go into those biohazard bags. So this is rules that are required by OSHA, Occupational Safe and Health Administration, and we will be following those. We do have our biohazard bags labeled with this big symbol so that that is clear that those are biohazard bags. So this place or this part, workplaces like ours are not likely to generate regulated bloodborne waste that requires proper disposal through a medical waste disposal company. So there are certain things that actually have to go through specific medical waste disposal. I don't think that applies to, I don't think that generally applies to us. I'm trying to think of when there might be a situation where we couldn't dispose of it ourselves. That's more applicable to hospitals and things like that, I believe. So these types of things still need to go in a biohazard bag. These types of things, Band-Aids or tissues, gauze, paper towels, and disposable PPE that's been, you know, in contact with bodily fluids. I'm seeing some stuff come in the chat. Is there anything, any questions in there?
No, I just said that if you have sharps, you can also place them inside of another container and then inside the bag so they don't puncture through the biohazard bag. And again, those kits are at the front desk.
Yeah, really, really good tip. Yeah, you probably don't want to be putting sharp objects directly into that plastic bag. So into a sharp box or something first. Great. Labels are not typically required for absorbed liquids that don't leak when compressed. So basically non-regulated waste materials that contain bodily fluids, it's saying they don't have to be in a labeled biohazard bag as long as the liquids are absorbed, so they are not released when compressed. So I think that's probably talking about like maybe you know, a potty accident or something. I would say if you have a biohazard bag that you can get to quickly, the easiest thing will just be to put any bodily fluids in those biohazard bags. Yeah, you can talk to myself or Rain if you are questioning how to dispose of something that needs to be cleaned up. So an exposure incident is a specific incident of contact with potentially infectious blood or body materials. If you think you have been exposed, carry out the following procedures. You can see those here. Wash cuts and skin thoroughly with soap and water. If there was no infiltration of mucous membranes or open skin surfaces, it is not considered an occupational exposure. So if you've, you know, touched something with your hands, you don't have any open, you know, cuts or anything like that, and it didn't get in contact with any of your mucous membranes, your eyes, your nose, your ears, it's not technically an exposure. I would say still go and thoroughly wash your hands though. That's something that we should be doing really frequently anyway. If it is an exposure incident, wash the cuts and the skin thoroughly with soap and water. And then any mucous membranes that it's come into contact with, if you accidentally forget and touch your eye or your mouth or something, you want to rinse your nose and mouth to remove any potential splashes that may have gotten up to you or any contact from yourself. You want to clean all those contaminated surfaces, and then that would be, again, an incident report. So if you know you've been exposed to it through an open cut or your mucous membrane, incident report, and then that's, you know, if you feel like you should seek medical attention for that, I would, you know, that's something I would probably suggest. All right, we're getting close to the end here. I think I'll make it in time. Post-exposure evaluation is a medical evaluation that's designed to help determine if you were exposed to infected blood or bodily fluid. So it's confidential for both the exposed person and the source person. Not even the company will know the results of the testing. So we won't know. It's confidential between you and potentially the person who you were exposed from. The evaluation will document the route of exposure and identify the source individual. So that's the point where if you know, you had contact with someone's bodily fluids and it was considered exposure, that's the point where you and that individual would likely, especially if that individual thinks they might be a carrier of something like that, you would work with medical professionals to determine if you've been exposed to something that that person is in fact carrying. So the medical evaluation would then provide results to you and not to us, the workplace. Questions about that? Okay. The Hep B vaccination, that's the one that I mentioned earlier. There is a vaccine for it. I'm not sure how long this vaccine has been around because I didn't get it when I was younger, but it was offered to me as I became an adult. So it is endorsed by medical communities. It's safe for infants, children, and adults. You can see here it can be provided at no cost according to this. If you would like to receive that vaccination, it may be able to be provided just as preventative care through your primary care doctor. I think that's generally how that works. That's how I got mine. So it is strongly endorsed and recommended for folks to get that so that if they are exposed to hepatitis B, you have some amount of safety. Yes. Okay. So if you don't have a Hep B vaccination and it's something that you're really interested in getting and you don't have health insurance right now, speak with me and I can look into you know, what we are required by law to offer. All right. Decontamination, disposal, and exposure incidents. Any questions about these?
Timothy had a good question in the chat about if a child sneezes or coughs directly into our face, would that be an exposure event? I think technically, you know, this presentation was designed pre-COVID. And I think if we knew that a camper had an infection of some sort, then yes. In today's world, we don't know if these kids are carrying COVID, to be frank. I mean, we certainly hope that they're not. But we should treat it as a potential COVID exposure. I think, you know, if they sneezed and your eyes are not protected by sunglasses or glasses, then yeah, possibly we would treat that as a possible COVID exposure and follow those protocols that are outlined in the handbook and elsewhere. I'm so sorry that that's happened to you, Timothy. That's terrible. But again, you know, I think if we're really on our campers about following those protocols where when their masks are off, they're away from other people, they're at least 3 feet away from you. You know, that's even something you can cover with your camp group. What should kids do if they have to sneeze? Remind them about, you know, sneezing into your arm, even masked or not. It's a good practice.
Yeah, really good question and good advice, Savannah. That's a really good example of, you know, those mucous membranes, because we do absorb things through our eyes and our mouth and our nose that can get into our bloodstream. Awesome. So this is the last part. Key points to remember: bloodborne pathogens can cause fatal diseases. They're microorganisms that are present in human blood. And we went over some of the pathogens that can be found in the workplace, like HIV, Hep B, and hepatitis C. Be aware of your exposure at work. You can be exposed when a coworker suffers a bleeding injury or a camper suffers a bleeding injury and you're administering first aid, you're touching any contaminated surfaces, or cleaning up bodily fluids. PPE is really important. Take those universal precautions. Use PPE and decontaminate as quickly as possible afterwards. Understand and follow exposure incident procedures if you think you have been exposed to blood or a bodily fluid that could carry bloodborne pathogens. And then report all incidents that might have led to exposure. If you have been exposed, that's an incident report worthy thing that's happened. So make sure to submit those, and then you can be evaluated for potential exposure by a medical professional. Any questions about the whole training?
Brianne just asked a question in the chat. Does mucus contain hepatitis B? Was that specifically stated in that presentation notes, David? Because I think you should assume yes.
Good question. Let me go back up to that slide.
It is 4:15, David, just now.
Okay, that's okay. I think the last bit that we have shouldn't take too long. Let me go back up to the Hep B slide. So let's see. It can survive outside the body. I'm not sure if it's carried in bodily fluids that are not blood. Let me see. Yeah, that might be something that I need to research to answer in the fully affirmative, but I think what Savannah said applies. Just assume that any bodily fluid could contain a bloodborne pathogen, whether it's blood or not. Best just to be safe, especially because we are doing this camp, as Savannah said, and we don't know if those campers are exposed to COVID. So even if it's not one of these bloodborne pathogens that we talked about, it's good to treat that as an exposure event if you do come into contact with any bodily fluid and it gets into your mucous membranes. Good question. I don't know if we have time for our quiz questions. Let me look at the agenda real quick.
Maybe just ask a couple of the most important ones.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. The rest of it is going to go pretty quickly. So let me see. I think I have some pulled up here, and I want you to answer me in the chat directly so not everyone can see it. So I'm going to ask a couple of these important questions from this training that we just talked about. So, oh, I guess I should share it. Actually, I should share it. Hold on just a sec. Here we go. So question 1, let's answer. Occupational exposure to blood, or OPIM, which I believe is a acronym for different bodily fluids that contain bloodborne pathogens, puts you at risk for A, B, C, or D. This is question number 1. You can respond directly in the chat to me or Savannah, because I can't see the chat right now. Pull it up.
Everyone's saying A.
Yep. All right, I'm getting lots of A's. Yep, those are the bloodborne pathogens that are carried in those fluids. That's A. HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. One sec. It's really bothering me that I don't know that OPIM acronym. I don't actually see it anywhere in the notes for this slideshow.
I'll look that up, David.
Okay. Thanks. What is the first step? Number 3. Let's do number 3. What is the first step following an exposure incident? Yes, okay. OPIM, other potentially infectious material. Thank you, Savannah.
I'm seeing a lot of C's in
Yep.
the chat.
And I would say that C is basically that incident report. You would notify me or a supervisor and do an incident report. I think C is a good answer. B, first aid, I'm seeing as well. I would say if an exposure incident would be if you have been exposed to a bloodborne pathogen through an open cut or your mucous membrane. So you are probably just performing first aid on someone, and then that's how you were exposed. So at that point, you would do an incident report and then likely seek medical attention if you felt so inclined.
If you're the one who needs first aid, though, by all means.
Yes, if you've cut yourself in the process of this and you need first aid, then yes, that should be a priority as well. Okay, let's move. Let me see what we have down here. I think we all have gotten pretty good at washing our hands. 20 seconds is usually what I hear. I don't actually see that as an option there. Okay, let's do number 9. PPE that is dripping with blood or body fluids should be A, discarded in the regular trash at work, B, brought home and discarded with the regular trash, C, washed and reused, or D, placed in a color-coded container or container marked with a biohazard symbol. Lots of D's. Yes, use those biohazard bags that are provided in the cleanup kit. Let's see if there are any other really important ones. I'll just answer number 14. I believe we have registered antimicrobial products, or we can use diluted household bleach as well. I think diluted household bleach is their answer that they would like. That is a really good disinfectant. Savannah, do you know, do we use diluted bleach for disinfecting, or do we have another appropriately?
Well, we can make diluted bleach ourselves because we do, have bleach at the facility, and we know how to make a 10% solution. But operations staff typically are the ones who are going to be stocking our facility with disinfectant chemicals. So there may also be other alternatives.
Perfect. That's one of those things where I haven't had to clean up one of these yet. So I haven't used diluted bleach, but thank you, Savannah. Yes, so we have diluted bleach and potentially other options too. Excellent. Okay, so thanks everyone for sitting through that with me. Yeah, James says it's really easy to obtain bleach for the average person. Most everyone has that in their household, right? It's at most workplaces as well. So that's a good go-to. All right, so one other thing that I wanted to go over today is Savannah mentioned, I'll just kind of reiterate what Savannah mentioned about the medication administration. If an adult or a caregiver tries to give you medicine to give to their camper, to your camper, do not take it and do not administer it. Please refer them to myself or to Rain. We are required to administer medications to the campers. The only exceptions that I know of are personal inhalers, which the campers may very well have on their person and can use as needed, or EpiPens. So EpiPens are another thing that you can carry or the camper can carry and can be used as needed. So those are the only 2 exceptions that I know of. Oh, thank you, Savannah. And this is the medication administration packet that an adult will fill out that we will have on file, and it'll be kept either in our paperwork or on ePact, which is that whole camper registration system that we have. So this is why Rain or myself need to do this. We have to keep track of these, exactly how the medication should be given. And then we actually log. We have a log for this. Each time a medication is given to a camper every day, we're going to log the time, and the method of yep, there's the log right there. So the dosage amount, we're going to sign off on that. This only will be filled out by Rain or myself. So this is not something that, you won't need access to those logs or anything. Again, the medication worksheet there that the adults fill out may be on ePact. So you might be able to see some of those, medications that the campers are required to take. And, but it's not something that you'll be administering. So basically, if a camper does need to take a medicine at a certain time every day, Rain or myself will come and find them and, just ask them to come over so that we can give them their medicine. And I'll say, don't make a big thing out of it. If you see us bringing your camper over, oh, you've got to go take your medicine, camper. It doesn't really need to be broadcast to the rest of the group. It's just something that they'll get used to after we start doing it for a while. Any questions about that? Excellent. Few minutes left. I think Judy did a great job going over emergency scenarios and poison ivy and tick checks yesterday. If anyone wants to rehash any of that, does anyone have any questions about some of the emergency scenarios we talked about yesterday, or other scenarios that you've considered that we didn't get to discuss?
I just want to tell a quick story. I had a dream that I had a tick on my hand, and I pulled it out myself, and there's just this huge hole. But I must have been thinking about it because I had a dream after all that discussion. Which thought was funny.
That is funny. Yeah, it sounds like, I'm sorry that it wasn't the best dream with the way that you pulled it out, but sounds like it's working in your brain. Yeah, I imagine that probably you had that dream because we were just talking about it. Thanks for sharing it. Okay, so if no one has any other emergency scenarios or questions about that, poison ivy or tick checks, we're about ready to wrap up for the day. I do want to ask, how things are going with humanity logins. Has anyone had issues with creating or their humanity account, activating it rather, and logging hours? Everyone feeling pretty good about that? Thumbs up if you're feeling okay with humanity. Okay. All right. So if I think I gave a quick intro about how to, or a quick show from my phone the other day about how to edit hours in humanity. If you need to edit your hours, you can ask me, but you can edit them yourself within the app. So if anyone would like a little bit more information about how to do that from me, feel free to give a call to the Nature Center. We will also be able to go over that next week. And then gateways logins. Did everyone receive that email? I think I already talked about this. Everyone received the email last night. So if you have not already gone to try to start your gateways account, create your login, please do that as soon as you can, because as we talked about earlier, it's taking some time to get those back. Oh, and JCs, that does not apply to you. Yeah, Chelsea, thank you for that. You should have received that humanity email, but gateways does not apply to JCs. For those who are not JCs, though, go ahead and do that if you haven't already, and then you can go ahead and get started on some of those mandated reporter trainings and things like that. For those who still need to do it, I know a couple people already had those from previous positions. I think I got at least one of them already in my email, so thanks for that. Oh, good question, Savannah. Is anyone attending the first aid and CPR training tonight here at the Nature Center? Olivia is. Timothy is. Did you have something you wanted to touch on about that, Savannah?
No, just a reminder that you have to arrive on time. So we're going to make sure you get out of here in just a minute.
Yes, good call. That said, in these 2 minutes we have left, I got a email from one staff member who said they did the training, didn't receive a receipt from Jessica. Savannah, can we get one of those from Jessica? How should we?
I think so. I would forward that email to Jessica and just say, hey, this person needs a receipt. Can you issue one for reimbursement purposes? And maybe just remind Jessica that all of our staff are going to be asking for receipts so that they can get reimbursed.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. So If you didn't get a receipt, email me and I will forward that along to Jessica. And make sure to ask for a receipt if you are not given one freely, and she should be able to issue those. Any other questions, concerns, comments before we wrap up for tonight? All right. I know that was not the most entertaining night of training. These last couple, tonight and last night, were really content heavy. As we go through toward the end of the week, we'll have more time for discussion and hopefully planning. So be on the lookout for that. Email me, please, if you would like to or need to borrow a tablet. If computer access is something that will cause a barrier for working on planning and training and things like that, we do have tablets that we can issue out. All right. I think that wraps up, everyone. If you do have other questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm here to support you. So glad to hear it, Renee. Oh, yes. Oh, okay, Brianne. I'm glad you mentioned that because I've had that same issue with humanity. We're finished up. I'm talking to one humanity issue. I think we need to get that looked at, Savannah, because it should be rounding down to it should be rounding to the nearest 15 minutes. And if you're clocking in at 2:33, for instance, it shouldn't be rounding you up to 2:45. That's an issue that I think we need to address because Brianne, you should clock your time as 2:30. And you can either edit that in the app or we can kind of show you how to do that or fix it for you because it shouldn't be doing that. If you clock
in at 3:37, it should round down to 3:30. If you clock in at 3:38, you would round up to 3:45. That's how typically it should be done. So maybe David, if you could email Nicole and let her know we're having this issue, she might be able to support us with this.
Sounds great. I can do that.
If Renee wants to stay on, you could share your screen and show her where you edit. Or there is a humanity tutorial. Actually, we could share that as well.
Yes, I think the humanity tutorial is in the email I sent Renee, but I'm not sure if it talks about editing within the app. If you want to stay on right now, I can show everyone how to edit within the app again. Because I know, Renee, you weren't on that training. It will be, I actually can, oh no, it won't be. We don't have that one recorded, actually. There's one training last week that we didn't get recorded. And Renee, I'll just have to catch you up on that. So if you need to go, goodbye. Thanks for being here. If you would like to see how to edit your time in the app, I'll show you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and add myself a time clock here so I can then show you how I'll edit it. Give me one sec.
I was just going to point out, I'd actually noticed this before and didn't think much of it, but yeah, it always rounds to the next thing. So it could even be, as a saying, like 4:03, and it will go up to 4:15 or however, instead of rounding down to 4.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be doing that. I had the same issue when I was part-time, and I kept just having to edit them. But we don't want everyone to have to do that every time. It shouldn't be working that way. So we'll try to get that, see what we can do to get that fixed. So I've just made myself clock in a punch. I don't know how well you can see my phone, but it's from 4:15 to 4:30. So if I want to edit this, you'll look at this bottom banner. Anything that you clocked in, you'll go to the time clock here on the bottom. And then up at the top, you can go to my. So I have 3 little options at the top. You'll probably have 2, and you want my and time clock selected, and then you'll be able to see whatever shifts you clocked in for the week that you are under. I'm going to go ahead and click this shift that I just made for myself, and then I can see it gives me an option to approve it. You probably won't see that option, but you will see this option in the top right that says edit. So once you click on some specific clock in that you've done, you can then edit those specific ones. You can see there's clock in time and clock out time. So I can go ahead and click clock in time and change it to whatever the correct appropriate time was on there that I actually started working. And then you can do the same with the clock out time. So if you forgot to clock in or you forgot to clock out, that's another really good thing that you'll need to edit for. You'll have to just go to that edit function and you can add your clock out time. It'll just have a little blank spot there, or your clock in time. Does that make sense? It's pretty easy to do in the app. I think it's actually a little bit more of an annoyance to do it on the computer, but I think it can be done on the computer too. So I liked using the app when I was clocking hours because it was just easy. Does that help at all, Renee?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was actually messing with it. So,
Perfect.
So yeah, I was like, oh, I can figure this out. This is cool. So yeah, ADD girl has ADD.
I had to have Rain show me how to do it.
No, it's yeah, I'm having some weird rounding errors. I clocked out last night, but it didn't have me clocked out until like the next day. And yeah, so I'm gonna go in, and then I promptly forgot to clock in today. So I'm gonna go and
it happens.
Make some adjustments and changes. But thank you for staying. And you mentioned time off. Does that include the email that I sent you earlier today?
Yes, thank you. I forgot to respond to that, but I did talk. I did add it in the calendar and talk with Savannah about that. And I want you to be able to do that training. It looks like we can accommodate you to have that week to do that.
Okay. Well, I mean, and again, you guys are my first responsibility, so I don't want you to. I don't want to put us in a weird spot. So it would just be nice to be able to do both if possible. So.
Yeah, and Renee, I know Abby has a couple weeks that she needs to take off this summer as well. And, you know, in those circumstances, we're already trying to plan for you to probably take her place.
Yeah.
So she, you know, she would do much of the planning and everything ahead of time, but you would jump in as her leader.
Sure.
And, you know, likewise, we can try to flex for your time off as well.
Okay.
We're in a more comfortable position, as I was saying earlier, this summer because we have such a high staff to child ratio this summer.
Yeah.
So I think that we can be a little more flexible with some summer vacations and things. You know, we try to discourage it whenever possible because it's just, you know, 12 weeks of employment, pretty much 12, 13 weeks of employment total. So, you know, it's not ideal when people have to take off more than a few days, but yeah, we can flex. And I think what David and I figured was it'd probably be fine. You know, if we get future requests, you know, particularly that overlap with somebody else's request, you know, we're going to have to consider that those as they come. You know, we can't just guarantee that anybody can, but the sooner people let us know about that sort of thing, the better.
Well, I just don't want to tell Brian that, yes, I can be a teacher and then have to back off of that. So,
well, ultimately that's up to David, I think. Okay. So if he says yes.
Yeah, I think, you know, Renee asked me for that week first. And like Savannah said, ideally we'd have everyone working every day all summer, which would be great. And I think during a typical year, we're probably a little bit more strict about that kind of thing. And I appreciate you being so, you know, understandable with that, but I would say go ahead and commit to that. If someone else asks for that, for a time off during that week, you and I and that person can kind of talk together about coming up with a plan for, you know, how we'll flex that and who's going to be in what role at that time.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Have a good one.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
For David and Rain specifically. So I was looking at the planning schedule for when lesson plans are due, and I'm like a little stressed that we start planning on Thursday and then the draft is due Friday. And that's like 80 hours of planning.
Yes.
So a little stressed.
Totally understand. I appreciate you asking that. As a former staff person, you have different, like a different viewpoint. So I'll say, the first thing I'll say is that's Rain and I decided to have it kind of as an aggressive schedule with the understanding that I'm going to be flexible about it, especially during our training weeks. I want to see how quickly people can plan things because we're doing the process a little bit differently this year than I think we've done it in past years. Chelsea has kind of put together, or is still working to put together, this kind of big activity daily schedule skeleton that leaders can kind of just drop things into this skeleton that she's creating. So what we're going to encourage of staff this year, especially, is for those first like couple of sessions of camp to try not to reinvent the wheel, to use a lot of the resources and activities and things that have been planned before and run and we know are successful for those first couple of weeks. So we're hoping a lot of that. And the reason I'm saying the schedule's aggressive with some flexibility is we're not sure how quickly that will go for people. You know, it might be that people are able to plan really quickly, just using some of the resources and plugging them into Chelsea's skeleton. Or it might be that, you know, that takes a little bit more work than we're, you know, able to meet that schedule with. So
I think you'll be a good barometer for how realistic our expectations are. So I really appreciate you saying something and continue to speak up, you know, about your ideas as far as the feasibility of you know, planning. I'm really cognizant that kids are not going to the pool, you know, 2 afternoons a week, right? We're still planning on doing
so much more time.
I know. Don't worry. We're gonna try to cover that. And we're also just taking camp at a different pace this year. It's gonna be slower. It's gonna be fewer activities that last a little bit longer because we have smaller groups of kids. And we're still planning on having JCs and other maybe supervisors planning all camp days, times on Fridays. So, you know, that'll be a time when you don't have to plan for that. And then like David was saying, Chelsea's trying to build in some things that she's just scheduling, you know, for people to really get the ball rolling. So hopefully it's just like a plug and play kind of situation for session 1.
So sorry to interrupt. So 2 years ago, we had like I saw like in the folder, those timesheets with everything is back. So for the days and weeks that we have like water play or like full camp, will we have those templates that have like that pre-plugged in, or is that something that like you'll be like, hey, plan an activity, but we might do this instead, just so that way I can start planning so that I can have everything done by Friday.
All right, I respect that you want to get a jump start. We'll just have to touch base with Chelsea to see when we can officially, you know, let you start working on that. And I'm happy to let you get started early since you do have that experience. The session schedules, I think, is what you're talking about, the like every single thing every day. Another goal of mine is that we're not making those so detailed. Like I'm basically hoping that Chelsea would have the basics of a session schedule laid out so that it looks something like, here's Monday, and you've got morning group time, like taking the place of circle time, right? And then active game, craft, snack, explore Busey Woods, you know, and just like, and that's the extent of the level of detail I think that they need, you know, like it could just say group game, outdoor game. I don't think the parents need to know that the name of the game was called Krabby Patties. And like, I want us to be able to be more flexible this year. And I'm
sure. That makes it easier.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Nature Day Camp can become a bit more like how Wild Child Camp was, where kids, you know, they did sit spots in the woods and they, you know, it was just a slower pace of camp. So, you know, when I started working 8 years ago, the camp season that I observed, you know, this group that I was paired with was, you know, a really strong leader, and they did a different activity like every 15 minutes. That's a lot of activities to plan. It's a lot of supplies. It's a lot of effort to put into. And yes, we want to keep kids busy so, you know, they don't have idle hands, but also we don't just need to be making crafts for the sake of making crafts. Like, what we do, let's make it count and be more about quality activities and quantity activities, you know. So I'm just kind of trying to shift how Nature Day Camp feels a little bit, you know. So we'll see how it goes. If you have suggestions, feel free to speak up. I
know it was really helpful for me my first year to like physically be there so I could see like, oh, there's where we build forts in Busey Woods. Like, this is how much time you can spend in Busey Woods before the kids like start going a little crazy, or like this is where we go pond dipping and stuff. So I feel like for the new leaders, it might be helpful for them to like see that like early next week, so then we can easily plan it.
Yeah.
So that way they can know what to put in their plans.
Nice. Excellent.
That's kind of something. Oh no.
I agree. It's
I
so
really
hard to
appreciate
plan.
that.
For something you've never seen. It's always been hard for me to plan for something I've never seen before.
And I'm glad you mentioned some of those specific things, because we do have plans for tours of UC Woods and Crystal Lake Park on Monday and Tuesday. But I think I might pick your brain for some of the things that, like, what are some of the places we should really highlight and point out, like those pond dipping areas, and then things like that. So I appreciate you bringing that. And I'll say, I'm so happy that you're trying to get a jump start and you want to like get everything done by Friday. And I want people to, use that planning time that we have at the end of the week as wisely as possible. But if I need to push, I'm open to pushing those deadlines back. And I purposefully made them early to see how much people could get done. And if it's something that everyone's like, we're not going to have these done in time, I'm completely open to pushing it back. The way I made the due dates, there's like a lot of extra time between when our training ends and then the next plans are due. So all of those dates can shift. And because we're doing it this kind of new way, and I'm new in this role, I'm trying to kind of get a gauge on like how quickly this goes or how slowly it goes. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'll say, I am definitely planning to be flexible with those, but I'm not trying to like tell everyone, hey, don't worry about getting it done. I'll move the date, but just know that I have that in my mind, and it's something that very well may happen.
Because I was like, I can't plan 2 weeks in 24 hours.
It's a lot. Yeah.
You can.
It is.
You can. Abby, would you be comfortable if we ever were to want to like direct people to you, or openly say, hey, Abby's done this camp before? You are our only returning leader this year. And so, if you're comfortable with that, I would love to be able to say, go talk to Abby about ideas, or, if she thinks this is feasible, or if you just happen to have, if you do get done planning early and everyone else is still planning session 1, maybe having a little brainstorming session where we let you take a big part in that. I mean, I think
it's nice to be able to brainstorm together.
I agree. Yeah. I think some of our best ideas come from just like, let's just sit around and talk about what we might be able to do. And I know we don't want to recreate the wheel, but like, we could say, here's the type of activity we're looking to do, and then just see if it's been written up somewhere else. Online, everything's online, right?
Yes. Okay, thanks for answering that question. I was like looking at the schedule, like, okay, I just want to clarify with this.
Thank you for asking. And you asking helps me kind of think about how I'm going to message that to the rest of the group too. So it is super valuable, and thank you.
All right, thank you. See you tomorrow.
All right, well, I'm doing dishes at the same time here. So, all right, I'll let you guys go unless you need me for anything. I'll see you tomorrow.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Rain, see you. Have a good wedding tomorrow. I hope you have a really good time.
Rain, you're planning on not being here tomorrow, right? Is that right, David?